Time. Thank you very much. The distinguished gentleman from Vermont is recognized. Excuse me. You would think I could read. The gentlewoman, Ms. Stansberry from New Mexico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and
How you doing?
thank you also to our ranking member. And I want to just start this afternoon by thanking you especially for the tone you set in this subcommittee hearing of bipartisanship, of collaboration, and of true oversight. That is truly in the spirit of why we are here, and I really appreciate it.
And I thank the gentleman, and I hope that you will expect the same from Mr. Conley, Mr. Mafume, and myself, because we intend to deliver that on behalf of the American people. And I thank the gentlewoman for recognizing that.
Thank you. I'm proud and excited to be able to serve on this subcommittee. I'm a former federal employee myself. I worked at the Office of Management and Budget, and I was a program examiner there. And so I know very well the work of our OIGs and the critical work that you do to investigate waste, fraud, and abuse in our agencies, make sure that individuals who are conducting their affairs in a way that is not congruent with the oaths that we take are held accountable, and that ultimately this body, Congress, is able to take action in order to have accountability, as well as our court systems. I know today we're here to talk about pandemic relief. I did want to follow on one of the comments that you made, Mr. Turner, about the perfect storm that happened at the beginning of the pandemic. I was serving in the New Mexico State House at the time, and I really appreciate the way you characterized the situation, because I think for folks who were sort of in the trenches trying to implement these programs, it's hard for folks to understand. In my district alone, we had thousands and thousands of people who suddenly were home. They had no way to earn income. They had rent or their mortgages coming up. They had no way to get groceries. And in my communities that I represent, which are predominantly low income, and many folks who are on fixed incomes, Medicaid, Medicare, and of course other programs, it was an incredibly difficult time. And what I saw on the front lines of our state agencies is that they just were not prepared. They didn't have the infrastructure. They didn't even have the IT infrastructure to handle the volume of phone calls and emails that they were getting, more or less the ability to serve all of the needs. And I think we also saw this at the federal level with the SBA. When I took office in the summer of 2021, we had a number of our constituent cases that involved individuals whose SBA loans had been stolen through passwords through the system. So I think we all know that it was an incredibly difficult time. Our feds, our state entities really rallied and did their best. And I want to thank those of you who were serving at that time. I know it was a really difficult time. I know that the main focus of this hearing is really on oversight of the pandemic programs themselves. But since we're here and this is our first hearing, I'd love to just do a quick lightning round with my remaining 2 minutes from each of you to just hear from you generally what tools and resources would help you do your jobs better as inspectors generals, and how can Congress actually help? And we'll start with Mr. Turner and then rapidly go down the line.
I think direct access to data would help us. It would allow us to get to issues faster. Had we had direct access, we wouldn't have had to wait 9 months to find the problems that were going on with PUA. I also think modernization, as you mentioned, there's a lot of antiquated systems, and it's a game changer to have IT that is really modern. It doesn't take, as you know, long for IT systems to be antiquated, and to go 10 years or 15 years is quite a while.
Absolutely. And Mr. Delmar?
Data access, certainly. IT modernization, certainly. One thing I would say is we found that the no-year and multi-year funds that we got to do our work with respect to the CRF and a couple of other programs were very helpful. And I think that would be a good idea to be able to focus over the length of the program funds devoted to enabling the oversight.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Shoemaker?
We've received $25 million in the CARES Act and $25 million in ARPA as supplemental funds, know your money. Those funds will be exhausted by the 24. We have approximately 185 dedicated men and women working for us. The President's put forward the budget for our base in fiscal year 24 that would allow us to sustain that as a permanent resource. SBA as an agency is forever changed, so we need to match that with our oversight. And the systemic weaknesses that SBA experienced on a day-to-day basis, the strain that it was under, we believe that we can provide, a lot of oversight to drive corrective action.
That is extremely helpful. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you to your staffs who are sitting behind you for serving the American people. We appreciate you.
Gentlewoman yields back her time. Thank you very much. The distinguished gentleman, my friend from Louisiana, Mr. Higgins, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, I'm going to move pretty quickly here. Each of you, yes or no, you're familiar with the various do not pay systems?
Yes.
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Delmar, Ms.
Yes.
Schumacher?
Yes.
Okay, so for the purposes of clarity, for the Americans watching, the do not pay systems, my understanding is the Treasury Inspector General oversees the Bureau of Fiscal Service, which operates a do not pay system. These systems are data matching services that agency use to help to prevent fraudulent payments in various systems. And further, there's another layer of that system that the law, the Consolidated Appropriations Act in 2021, is my understanding, allows the Social Security Administration to share its state-reported death data with the Treasury Department's DMP portal. So there appears to be, prior to many of these fraudulent payments going out, an effort by Congress and by the executive branch to put protective measures in place whereby our bureaucracies would not send out, billions of dollars of fraudulent payments in manners that are shocking to Americans when they're revealed. So I'm advised now, and I'm going to ask Mr. Delmar and Mr. Turner to respond. I'm advised that largely regarding COVID payments, the DNP systems, while not used, underused, or set aside for what reasons I don't know, and that the Social Security system, Social Security Administration, death record systems was not utilized to filter payments before they went out. So we're talking about responding as a Congress and working together with the executive branch to protect against this ever happening again. Doesn't appear that the protections we had in place were utilized to stop it from happening this time. Mr. Turner, please respond.
Yeah, I think part of the problem that the states were inundated, and some states do not participate in the Integrated Data Hub, which actually has access to the master file. So that was part of the problem. Also, I think in their
Well, let me interject, Mr. Turner, not to cut you off, good sir, but to stay in this dialogue because the American people are watching, and the government had no problem telling us every night how many people allegedly were dying of COVID. There seem to be plenty of death records available through the CDC because we were inundated with data about how many people were dying allegedly of COVID. Turned out they died with COVID, but that's another story for another day. Yeah. So you're saying that you did filter your payments through death records?
What I'm saying to you is not all states did because not all states participate, but also unemployment insurance is an entitlement which is not affected by the do not pay list.
So, but the do not pay systems, again, my understanding, it's not my area of expertise. That's why you gentlemen are here. We're asking. Doesn't the do not pay system protect against, say, same name used multiple times at different addresses, or the same address with 100 different names, or, a variety of reasonable review that computers conduct to protect against fraudulent payments. Isn't that what the do not pay systems are?
I have to defer to Mr. Delmar.
Okay. The do not pay system takes in data from a number of other databases, and you mentioned the Social Security death master file. The 21 appropriation did create a 3-year opportunity for Social Security to provide that information to DNP. It's supposed to start by the end of this year and go for 3 years. It's my understanding that the department
Were other filters engaged, sir, before payments were sent out for COVID monies that were fraudulently accessed, protecting against, say, multiple payments going to the same address under different names, et cetera?
Well, I mean, the DNP system, whatever information was in there, in addition to the death master file, there are a couple of other systems from other agencies that the Fiscal Service would like to get to make the DNP a more complete resource to provide a filter.
I thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I actually got an answer here in 5 minutes, but I yield the balance. I yield my time. I'm expired.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from California, Mr. Garcia, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses. Appreciate you all being here today. Just a few broad notes. Before joining Congress, I was mayor of Long Beach, California. It's a city of about 500,000 people, and I was mayor the entire time during the COVID emergency. I think it's important to remember that this was the single largest loss of life event, not just in my city, but in the country in the modern era. It was a devastating emergency. It was serious at every level, and certainly when you have that level of an emergency, mistakes are going to be made along the way. And I think for overall, our agencies did the very best to respond in the best way possible. I'm personally very proud of the response that we had in our community. White House called our response in Long Beach a national model. The governor called our response the best in the state. And so I think we did what we could, but we also made, like every single community across the country, some mistakes that we learned from. And I think the idea here, and hopefully the goal of this committee and many others, is that we can work to prevent future pandemics, that we can work if a pandemic were to arise, that we do the best we can to address them and to get folks support and help. And I know that's something that all of you are working to ensure that our systems are at a better place in the future. The CARES Act, the American Rescue Plan, literally saved communities, saved states, and saved cities. And we know this because we've seen the data. I know it by what I saw in my own community. And so I want to thank all of you for also looking into these programs and for also the work that you've done in ensuring that that the money is being spent adequately and in the right places. So thank you for that. Through that money, we funded testing programs, we funded life-saving programs for families, and helped small businesses across the community, which is important. And I think one thing we've heard throughout the committee is a lot of attacks on programs and the PPP program, which is understandable. But this also all started, and the pandemic started, and this program in PPP started under President Donald Trump. And so I understand that when the president set up initially the response and the programs, it wasn't perfect. There were mistakes that were made. And as much as I wish the Trump administration had done a lot more to help small businesses to set up this program so there would be less fraud and less abuse, I wish that would have happened. It didn't happen. But I also understand that we were in a national emergency, and sometimes folks, and particularly public servants across the federal agencies, are doing the best that they can. I very much support the work that was done to support small businesses. We saved small businesses and communities, and I'm very grateful for that. And I want to also, just beyond that, on the PPP program, ask a specific question, something that relates to a few instances in California. We've had numerous workers reach out to our office and others in the state that are concerned that some of the PPP funds that may have gone to large corporations, and in this particular case, we're talking about hotel workers, where PPP funds may have not gone to the workers themselves or to support some of the salary needs that were part of the requirements for certain loans. My direct question, and perhaps this can be for the SBA inspector, for Mr. Ware, SBA OIG currently has tens of thousands of complaints, I believe. How are those being prioritized right now?
Thank you for the question. In regards to size standards, we actually have an ongoing review right now looking at the size standards relative to VPP. So if you have constituents that have complaints, please contact our hotline to give us that information. We certainly will take that into consideration. How are we looking at our hotline? So I indicated we have 230,000 hotline complaints. We have used data analytics, specifically artificial intelligence, machine learning, through a process called topic modeling to differentiate the complaints into 8 buckets. Of that, we have identified 81,000 of actionable leads. We are now marrying that data with the actual PPP loan data, and in doing so, we will prioritize our work to look at the cases that have the most impact, that instill the most integrity within SBA's programs. And I say that because we have limited resources. We have 51 criminal investigators.
I appreciate that, sir. And if there is, for example, in this case, I've been certainly approached by a group of workers, some of our hotel workers that have big concerns about some of the PPP loans. And if we're able to directly maybe get that information to you about this specific instance, that would be very helpful to them. And I do appreciate your time. Can I get that commitment, sir?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, sir. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. And as I do, I also want to thank the committee for what has been a pretty productive subcommittee meeting. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentleman yields back his time. Distinguished gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Green. Georgia, Ms. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And gentlemen, I thank you for coming before the committee today and discussing this very, very important issue, especially given that our government has the American people in over $31 trillion in debt. So we appreciate you helping track that down and where it goes. Since all the money has been spent on COVID, there's approximately over $400 billion missing, which is extremely concerning to most Americans. And I just want to talk for a brief second about how difficult it's been. Obviously, everyone knows this. The government shutting down our economy, shutting down businesses, paying people basically to stay home, the difficulties of it for employers to get their employees to come back to work, to start going again. And, here we have the GAO estimates that the total fraud and pandemic UI programs amounts to at least $60 billion. Just a brief question for you, Mr. Turner. Were there any states that seemed to be particularly vulnerable to fraud and improper payments in their UI programs?
We saw across the country, most states exhibit the same problems and challenges. Didn't really see, so all of them I felt were vulnerable, and there was vulnerability that was displayed.
What type of problems were there?
Again, the multi-state claims with stolen identities was the #1 problem, just multi-claims and people filing for numerous people, to include deceased individuals, prisoners, suspicious email, multi-states.
And has that been chasing down those basically criminals? Has that been something that your department has been putting a lot of time to?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, from day one, and we've only just been able to scratch the surface. So that has been the biggest challenge for us.
Approximately how many charges have you filed, or how many people have you filed charges against?
1,200 indictments and 600 charges. And just kind of let me give you an example of the scope of what we've been dealing with. Before COVID, before the pandemic took place, we had maybe 100 cases or complaints a year on UI fraud. Since then, we've been getting 100 to 300 a week.
Wow, that's a considerable amount. Thank you for answering my question. I'd like to ask about the do not pay system. I know you all been asked about this a good bit before. The Office of Management and Budget and the Treasury Department jointly maintain the do not pay system, which is a free service that agencies can use to verify a recipient's eligibility for payment. I'd just like to ask Mr. Del Mar, Mr. Turner had said previously that some states don't use the do not pay system. Is that correct? And if so, why not?
I believe they are now required to, but that wasn't always the case. So I think the combination of they've made improvements in their interface. It's an easier system to use than it was, and the addition of the additional databases that we talked about, the Death Master File and a couple of others. And one point I was going to make is the current legislation allows a 3-year use of the Death Master File for DNP. So that would go from the end of this year through the end of 26, roughly. I think there's a proposal to make that a permanent allowance, and I think that would do a lot to make the system more effective in stopping multiple payments or ineligible payments.
Right. There seemed to be plenty of them, I think. Did all agencies involved in pandemic relief use the do not pay system?
I don't think all did. I can get you more specific information and address your question, with a lot more depth, and we'll do follow-up on that.
Great, thank you so much. The Pandemic Response Accountability Committee found 69,323 questionable Social Security numbers allegedly used to obtain $5.4 billion in COVID relief, according to a report. Mr. Shoemaker, do you know what happened to that money, and was it ever recovered?
The specific instance, no, I don't know if that money was recovered. It would have been, it could possibly be associated with ongoing cases or cases in the past. That was a different type of a project. That was a data analytics project, just to review. But what that report indicates, it was a very powerful resource, which is the Social Security Administration. That data is not readily available to the Office of Inspector General. It's not readily available to programs whenever they stand it up. So when we talk about the instances where an agency may not have used do not pay, the government has data available. If that data is made available, which we're in the business of best evidence. If you're an auditor or you're an investigator and you're looking for the best evidence, you go to the source. If that source data is available in the programs and in oversight, we certainly can unlock the power of that data.
Well, that makes sense. In October 2020, your office said that SBA's management continues to insist that it controls are robust despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Do you still agree with that assessment?
Certainly that assessment at that time, and I believe that assessment has been proven true. The over 700 indictments and 600 arrests is further proof that there is rampant fraud in the EIDL program.
Thank you very much. I yield